Namaste. We start with our Shanti Mantra and Guru Vandanam. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. We are very fortunate to be able to come together every Monday to discuss the practical aspects of bridging the gap between what the teachings of the tradition say and what we understand. Bridging the gap between what we understand and what we live. The gap between where we are and where we want to reach. Right. So here, this is a rare opportunity where the growth in understanding can be facilitated in a very unique way, which we may not get in a normal formal course. When there is a course material with a subject, they do have their own advantages, but we have a forum for us to discuss the everyday struggles that we might have in our abidance, in spirituality, in the knowledge. Nishta is about addressing the little issues, the simple, small things, the challenges, the spiritual challenges, the ethical challenges, the practical challenges during our sadhana, both on the meditation or yoga mat and off the meditation or yoga mat in our everyday lives. Now, to discuss the challenges that we face and see how we can become more integrated with true spiritual understanding, so that we are in tune with the grand cosmic rhythm of life. Ritambhara, what Patanjali says, that is where our journey is towards becoming Ritambhara, infused and suffused with truth, filled with truth. Ritam. Our mind is completely soaked in the divine rhythm of life, the intelligence in every aspect of our life, in every aspect of our manifest being. So that is what we are going towards. This does not mean we are attaining something. It is exactly the process of us gradually eliminating this noise that we call as individuality. In normal talk, we say ego. Right? So the whole point of Nishta is nothing but dissolving of this ego, which means the very clearly seeing, it begins with very clearly seeing the functional, temporary, and the transient nature of the ego, and as simply as an entity of the mind and not as oneself. When we say ego, when we talk about it, we say ego. But when we are experiencing ego, we are identified with it. We are defined by the ego. What we now call as ego, at that time, he hurt my ego. We say, now when we look back, but at that moment when we are hurt, you are not telling my ego is hurt. You are telling I am hurt. You feel hurt. So you are the ego, right? So this is whole thing is about whenever we feel a desire, a strong desire, whenever we feel strong fear, whenever we feel a like, whenever we feel a dislike, whenever we feel something pleasant or what we like, and then there is a pravritti towards it, where the organs of action, the faculties of thinking and perception, everything is geared towards that experience, pravritti, where our consciousness flows into that readily. And whenever we encounter something unpleasant or what we dislike or we disagree with, there is a contraction of withdrawing from it or trying to get rid of it from the field of experience. So this is what our life has been, right? And our perception of our individuality as successful or a failure depends upon how much we are able to maximize what we like and minimize what we don't like. Then I am a successful person. So this is what normally a simple ignorant person knows. They don't know anything about that more than that. They don't know a version of self that is beyond the mind. Right? There is no conception of that. So that is exactly what that dimension is what we are addressing in our spiritual knowledge, in our quest for spiritual knowledge, in the quest for spiritual freedom. The freedom is from this entanglement with individuality, taking what I am not as myself. That is where the entanglement is. That is where the bondage is. That alone is the bondage, nothing else. So when we are in our journey towards becoming Ratambhara, then you may say it is the individual who is becoming Ratambhara. It is a way of saying there is no individual. Individual is only namesake. The individual, you are not, you don't, there is no self definition based on individuality. Individuality is only a functional entity for the sake of perception. Right? It is like in our Upanishadic example, if we want to say, the clay does not call itself the pot. If you want to give the popular example. Now, the individuality is experienced as long as the body is alive. So the experience of individuality is not a problem. Identification with the individuality is the problem. Individuality as a simple operational entity where there is no self-definition attached to it, where it is just for the sake of, where it is part of the perception, part of the dualistic experience that is created by Maya, it is all right. But there is no avidya operating in it, right? So that is what we mean by Ritama. We all becoming Ritambara is a way of saying. There is Ritam alone, there is nothing else. What we call as Ritam, Ritagum Satyam Param Brahma, right? And that Ritam Satyam, that alone is there. There is nothing other than that. There is nothing called individual and you are that. So, this is something that cannot be talked about. It is only a way of saying. In contrast with the normal person, in contrast with the normal mind that is full of karmas and kleshas and all that, this is the Ritambara, because the other mind is the Rajas, Tamas influenced and it is completely caught up in a personal, individual noise. There is a personal noise in the cosmic orchestra. That's my usual example. If this universal cosmic life is an orchestra, Ishvara the orchestra called Ishvara, this jiva is like a noise, born of ignorance. It's like groping in darkness. When everybody is, say that uh, it's like there is a group of people marching, like in a military parade, for example. There is a group of people marching, and one person is not able to see suddenly, right? One person is not able to see. Because he is not able to see, he projects how he is supposed to walk, and then he is moving here and there, creating a noise. That is what we are doing. He doesn't even keep quiet, doesn't walk out of the march. So there's a life of ignorance, the life driven by ignorance and desire. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. This mind, in other words, is called as individuality. What you call as individuality, me, myself, my individuality, this is what is me. They say, identity. People go through what is called identity crisis. Who am I, and all that. And then they arrive at one self definition that is most comfortable for all their complexes. And then they say, this is what is me. They will say, this is one of these. When we grew up in a traditional setup, we never heard about this kind of talk at all. What am I supposed to be? That is how we used to think. Only after I, went out into this world, this yoga teaching and all that, it's a recent thing. I'm coming across these people talk, and it is becoming more and more people talking about me being myself. Me being myself. This is what is me. This is my individuality. So this self-definition or creation of an identity, that becomes like a huge thing, and one goes into an identity crisis and looks for a certain acceptable definition of oneself that is in line with the whatever is the conditioning and values that one have imbibed during the growing up, and whatever is the self definition has to agree with something that is valuable and positive. Otherwise they don't feel good about themselves. I am a liar. That is what I am. When somebody says like that, somebody out of guilt, in a moment of guilt, says, I am a liar. This is what I am. When they say, they don't feel good about themselves. Then somehow after all the therapy and everything, they find out it is not, I am not a liar. It is just the effect of the fear that made my mind. So they blame the fear. You go to a therapist, the therapist will tell you whom to blame. You blame the system, you blame your parents, you blame the education, or you blame some brain chemistry, call I have this problem, that problem. Basically, therapist will train you to blame something and feel good about yourself. And then to create some identity, some positive image of yourself that will, where you feel good about yourself. And it will go on for some time, provided things are cooperating. And then life, the merciless as it is going to throw some challenge, and then your so-called nice comfortable identity will get shaken up. Then you go into an identity crisis and then start the drama all over again. This is what is happening, right? So this is samsara. This modern thinking is like a new kind of a samsara within samsara. There is a normal samsara, which is the natural way of life, that itself is bondage. And then on the natural way of life, which is bondage, you create layers and layers of extra bondage that is born of imagination and projection, and born of ego struggle. So that distinguishes the man. There is samsara for a dog, there is samsara for animals, for cats. They are bound by their instinct. They are, even if they want to rest, they cannot rest if it is not a environment that is free from fear. They are always in fear. Animals, we think that animals are all very enjoying life, relaxed. They are not. Animals are completely in fear and driven by their urges. They have no freedom at all. So provided nature cooperates and enjoys some peace of sleep. So a positive joy that they experience is when they are experiencing a connection with an object that is pleasing for them. Priya, moda, pramoda, it's a say, like you show a new some kind of a nice preferred snack for a dog. It wags its tail and it's very happy. You take the dog for a walk, it's very happy. So there are some experiences that are considered pleasant, and there is always a desire for that, because Ananda is the drive. Ananda, quest for Ananda is the drive. So Ananda is experienced in this way, where there is no seeking for some time. There is the desire and fear, everything is taken care, and then the mind is in a state of an expansion and you have an Ananda. So in animals, they have a samsara, but the animal samsara is not, it is not ego based. Animal samsara is programmed. It's a kind of an experiential samsara, and where there is not much of thinking involved, unless human goes and messes up. Some evolved animals they do have, and the evolution is always happening in animals also. Recently I read an article where they say the dogs are evolving in new ways because of their increased human contact. So they're developing different kind of cognitive abilities and all that. So we have to see where it goes. But as far as we know, until now, the samsara is experienced by animals is a natural samsara. Now the same samsara is also shared by human beings. Aharam, Maitunam, all that is there for search for food, procreation, uh, pursuing what you like, avoiding what you don't like. It is the same for animals and for us. There is no difference. Like in Viveka Chudamani, it says, no? There is nothing that differentiates a human being from an animal except the Viveka, except the Jnana. Except the Jnana, there is no difference between human being and animal. So if I don't have Jnana, I am not an animal. You may say, we are like animals without Jnana. Provided you are natural, you are a Prakrita Purusha. You are a natural, just very natural, like a child, with not a very sophisticated person, not a child, not a very developed ego. Then you are like an animal. That is natural samsara. But on top of that natural samsara, we add layers and layers of artificial samsara. Like this identity crisis, an example that I told you, right? We add layers and layers of artificial samsara, and we struggle with the whole thing. And that is exactly why we need all this teaching. Not just to return to nature, but to understand the root problem of samsara itself. To go to the source of the samsara itself, the cause of samsara. Right. So this mind, this intellect, and this ego that we have, which is nothing but a sign of a self-conception, ability for self-concept. Right. So when that is hijacked by avidya, raga, dvesha, there is ignorance, desire, fear, etc., we create what is called identity and individuality. It is the same faculties that create individuality, the buddhi of a human being. It is the same faculty that can be taught to attack and eliminate the cause of samsara, the avidya itself, thereby stopping the cycle of transmigration. The need for a mediated experience comes to an end. Mediated experience means dualistic experience, as the experiencer, the object that is experienced, and the process of experiencing. These three factors in experience is there in any dualistic experience. So this experience that comes because of the association, mediation through the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. The experience of the relative phenomena and experience of the limited individuality. This and all the other objects that are sought by this limited individual. It is called mediated experience. This mediated experience comes to an end. The need for mediated experience. I don't feel a need for mediated experience. In Yoga Sutra, they call guna vaitrishyam. Vaitrishnya means not desiring, reverse of the opposite of desiring. not desiring, I have nothing to experience in an objective way anymore. There is no need for an objective experience, because the totality, which is one's own nature, the completeness, which is one's own nature, which I am already, because I have realized that nature of myself. There is no more seeking of any specific experience through the gunas. So freedom is not an experience like as one of the experiences that we have, like Kundalini experience, Samadhi experience, some kind of an alpha state, theta state, and all they say. So it is not a experience through the mind in the normal sense that say it is a complete freedom from the need for any experience. It is better to define it in negative terms rather than in a positive term. It is the, if I say it is the Satchidananda itself, then what do you understand? You don't understand anything. What is Satchidananda? Sat, it is only that which is the base of everything. So what is that? Infinite. Infinite, how can you conceptualize infinite? It is nothing that is finite, right? Infinite, it is a negative, right? Ananta, infinite, that which does not come to an end. One thing you can say, Ananda and Jnana is that experience, that awareness. But this awareness is a way of telling, because we are existing in the mind. As long as the body and mind is there, you can say it is pure consciousness, the unconditioned consciousness. But there is, but what exactly is the self cannot be described in terms of what we already know. All that we know is of the mind. So we cannot use any of these things to describe what is the nature of the pure self, which is not conditioned by the mind. That by, even Upanishad says, that by which the mind thinks, but that which cannot be thought by the mind. From where the words and the mind come back. No, all these terms are used. So it looks like a big thing that, it has to be attained with some great, uh, we have to do a lot of things to get it. No, it is very, very simple, extremely simple. That is the problem. Because we are always used to effort and result of effort, cause and effect. We are caught in this loop of cause and effect, right? So it's a completely another dimension. It's like it's a totally a different story altogether, right? It's not within the known, but it is the most intimately known, because you are. It is not known in the sense, it is not not known as a thing, right? So this individuality, which is the reason for samsara, the mechanism that creates individuality as the reason for samsara, is the same mechanism that puts an end to samsara, provided it is taught, provided it is conducted in such a way, this faculty is conducted in the light of the teaching. What we say, Mahavakya Guru Upadeshita, Mahavakya Janita, Ekatma Rupa, Jiva Brahmaikya Rupa, Khandakara, Vritti, Rupa, Jnanam, what they say. All these different ways of Bhagavan Shankaracharya has explained it in many ways. So there is a very clear way of telling that. So this mechanism is what we are using. We are first liberating this buddhi from all the clutches of individuality, all the habit patterns. We see the false I for what it is. The false I is seen as false I. What is of the mind is seen as of the mind and not as of the self. That which is not me is seen as not me. So the journey is about, it is more of undoing than doing. We are not attaining anything. What we need is already attained. But we are stuck in this kind of an artificial projection and noise. So this is what we are disentangling ourselves from. Disentangling these knots which sustain that dream or that false sense of I, which sustain this drama, this melodrama called individuality, is being sustained by a lot of habitual, lot of knots, cognitive knots. Knots is K-N-O-T. You take a thread and make a knot. That's what I mean. So knots in the sense that keeps the thinking stuck in a certain way. What is a knot? Cognitive knot is like you are not able to think beyond that. You are stuck in the pattern. Your entire thinking is limited by a certain pattern. So stuck within patterns and patterns within patterns within patterns. Right? That is what is a knot. Hridaya Granthi, they say. So that controls the thinking, that controls the way you want to act, that controls the desire for experience. That's what keeps this whole structure of individuality alive. This collection of all these granthis or knots, right? All the knots will be broke, of the hearts are cut asunder when the Supreme Self is beheld, says. That is one of the terms used. Also in Kundalini Yoga, we say Granthi Beda. In Yoga also we say, Brahma Granthi, Rudra Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi. So all this has something to do with releasing very deep-seated habit patterns in the cognitive behavior, in the manifest consciousness. Right? There's cognitive errors, very deep-seated cognitive errors. That's what we are trying to disentangle and liberate this experience of the self from all the sense of entanglements, and seeing the false self as false self, and dissolving this error called individuality in the light of truth. So seeing individuality for what it is dissolving it. Dissolving the absoluteness of individuality. Individuality not as an experience, as an identification. The self-definition does not come from individuality. So that is what we are working towards. And for that, we have to be very observant and note in our everyday life how we are experiencing this Granthi. One classic moment that we all can observe during our everyday life, right? To converting our normal mundane life into a contemplative, enlightening life that opens the field of inquiry, of self-inquiry, right? So how to do that is take note of the moments where you feel helpless. It need not just mean helplessness with respect to getting some things done outside. Internal struggles, the internal challenges, the struggles, the helplessness. One of the main thing is, the helplessness with respect to karma when you are pursuing the purushartha. This is the technical way of putting it. I will explain. I want to do something willfully in line with my values. I look up to some values. I respect some values, and I want to live up to that standard. All of us have that. Even a pickpocket wants to live up to some standard, right? So we all have our standards. If we are able to live up to that, we feel good about ourselves. Of dharma, purushartha, and also other purushartha. That sense of self-worth, right? That in our journey towards that, we are struggling with our compulsions, deep-seated compulsions, which can be understood as karma. In our experience, let us say, whenever your conscious pursuit is challenged by compulsion, compulsive habit patterns that are contrary to your conscious, understood as a conflict between purushartha and karma. Yeah, where there is a certain level of helplessness experienced, and then one overcomes it with the right effort, with the right guidance, with the right company, and with God's grace and everything, one is able to, with the discipline, one is able to, and knowledge, one is able to overcome. With discipline, knowledge, the right company, motivation, etc., one is able to overcome it and attain the Purushartha. This is the story of the internal struggle. Right? Now, this need not be some very big thing like, attaining samadhi in Kundalini Yoga, attaining Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or becoming the president of a country. This can, or as uh, or attaining you some, climbing the corporate ladder. This need not be all those big things. It can be a very simple thing. Like when I wake up in the morning, I get up from my bed without lounging for more than 5 minutes. It can be a very simple thing like this. I wake up, I have to wake up and sit up and do some conscious breathing. So spend some time. I might have kept something, remember my mantra, whatever. I would have kept a routine that I consider as appropriate to do after I wake up. This most of us have a very simple thing. Now, here is a challenge. The pattern and the habit and the comfort zone wants you to sleep. But sometimes, if you have not had a good sleep, then the body needs sleep. That's another story. I'm not talking about the body's need for sleep because of a completely messed up lifestyle, working for 12 hours, 16 hours, targets and all that, and then you don't sleep. You just sleep for 3 hours and wake up with an alarm and then tell that, oh, I feel like sleeping. But that is body wanting sleep. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about you slept okay, but you feel cozy and lazy, for example. This cozy, lazy, and wanting to, take your phone and look at it, that is another thing that has come nowadays. So, early morning, the moment you wake up in bed, for example. But you have a routine. I wake up. In the Nishta class, we have discussed about looking into that moment of waking up before coming in contact with the world. If I catch that moment, I will have a very high, deep level of awareness that I can sustain throughout the day. We discussed in the Nishta class. It's all there. It's all there in your plan. Wake up plan. Take a few deep breaths. Remember the mantra, whatever. You have something. And then get up. And then get into the routine, morning yoga practice, sadhana, or walking, exercise, whatever. Right? Now that is in conflict with that is being challenged by the force of the habit of cozy lazy. Right? So this is a very small challenge. So how am I overcoming that? What are the tools that I am employing? What knowledge I am employing? What methodology I am employing? And how I am going to gradually eliminate this habit pattern from asserting itself at all. This there must be no conflict at all. There must be no conflict in the mind. I wake up, I do the routine. There must be no opposite force from inside me wanting me to do something else. Now that is the target. I overcame my inner compulsion for being cozy and lazy, and then I did what I have to do. That is the first level of success. Right? That you have overcome the challenge. That is wonderful. You feel good. Excellent. But that's how we begin. That's totally great. But that is not enough. We go to the next. We have to take, once we have done that, we have to take it to the next level. After some time, after being disciplined for a long time, the disciplined person, the already disciplined person, who doesn't have to struggle too much with the habit patterns and all that, cannot be stuck with the discipline. One has to evolve to the level above discipline where one is spontaneously right. How does it happen? So we have to see what habit pattern of the buddhi that creates that sustains that comfort zone. What is the habit pattern of the buddhi? What is the cognitive error that sustains the challenging force, that sustains that karmic, whenever I say karma, that karmic pattern that sustains it, that pattern of life or a pattern of habit. I just gave you a small example with waking up in the morning, but we can see this pattern asserting itself everywhere in our life. We make the same relationship mistakes, we make the same kind of spending mistakes, we make the same kind of wrong decisions again and again in the similar kind of challenging situations. We make similar mistakes. Now that is a ego structure, that is a certain kind of pattern, cognitive error. So that cognitive error is so compulsive. No, it pushes you to decide in a certain way. In Tamil, we say, "Kedu varum pinne, madi kettu varum munne." When bad time is coming later, the corrupt intellect will come before. They say, no, so that is where the karma will work through the process of twisting your judgment. That is how it starts. So initially we keep a protocol and we follow that so that the wrong judgments don't come in the way of our protocol. That is the part of, pramana buddhi, discipline, shraddha, all that comes in that grade. But there is something that creates that cognitive error in the mind. We may not follow it, we may ignore it and all that, but that creates that pressure, that internal pressure. So first you see how much helplessness you experience with respect to doing what you consider is right in your with your conscious intellect, or what you consider as appropriate in your pursuit of your conscious goals, which is purushartha, in line with your values, etc. What is the challenge you face? The challenge can be on different levels. What is the level of helplessness? You are able to do what you are supposed to do, but you are not able to be free from the internal pressure and tension. That is another level of helplessness, where the chitta is not completely cooperating. So how do I manage it? So we discussed, if you remember, in the Samadhi Sampatti, the sixfold inner well, we discussed Shama and Dama, right? Dama is Bahendriya Nigraha, control over the external organs of action. I don't look at something that is tempting, but I am not supposed to look at. I don't look at. Control of the organ. I don't all these bogas. No, I don't do what I am not supposed to do. I don't do it physically. Control the organ. But after I controlled, I am thinking about it. My mind is hovering around. Now, how do I resolve that movement of the mind in the background? That is Shama. Mano Nigraha. Indriya Nigraha, Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, I am keeping them under control. They don't go hovering around all over the place. I am able to do that. But after controlling my sense faculties, my organs of action and organs of perception, I don't look what I'm not supposed to look. I don't taste what I'm not supposed to taste. I don't behave in a way I'm not supposed to behave. All that, but inside there is restlessness, there is pressure. No, you are like a volcano. Now they say, don't awaken the beast inside me. I am being very controlled right now. This is one famous dialogue. So that beast inside you, why is there a beast inside? Because there is no Shama. That's where the practice of Shama comes. Shama is Mano Nigraha. How that Mano Nigraha comes? That comes by processing the source of tension in the mind, where we are engaging the buddhi according to the teachings through pranayama, through contemplation. A combination of pranayama and contemplation helps us to get rid of that restlessness. So even though we may be very disciplined, we might experience some helplessness with respect to the quality of the mind behind this disciplined person, right? So even though we may know some good meditation techniques, alpha meditation, theta meditation, binaural beats, whatever, all that we are able to somehow auto suggestion, self hypnosis, we are somehow able to cheat the mind. Great. But we might experience helplessness with respect to the same pattern coming back again in the same situation, because the buddhi is not transformed, the attitude is not transformed. So we experience some helplessness with respect to that. So in our everyday life, with respect to the various little things that we do in the course of our living, make a note of the different kind of helplessness that you experience. So that is where we need to work and find the tools for dealing with that. Right? That is why in Yoga Sutra we have various tools for various levels of problems in the mind. You, even though the entire thing is about disengaging from the mind, we also have sutras that talk about calming the mind, soothing the mind. Chitta prasadanam, we have. There are sutras for that. Then there are sutras for experiencing immediately quietening the habitual restlessness and feeling some kind of a peace. Prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya. We have different sutras to deal with the different ways in which the mind can be brought into a kind of serene state. But ability to calm down the mind is not going to put an end to samsara, because it does not address that avidya. So we have to, as we make it a habit, to make note of the different kind of helplessness that we experience through the various living experiences of the day, and the nature of behavior, whatever we remember from the dream. Right? If you make a note of that, probably maintain a journal, and then we can think about and look at the pattern, what is repeating, what is where I am experiencing more helplessness. In fact, sometimes I will not even recognize that I am helpless at this point. It will take some time for me to recognize. Once I am starting to work like this at the from the surface level, gradually the self observation becomes more and more and more. That self objectivity, the objectivity about oneself, and this self analysis becomes more and more. The deeper and deeper levels of of helplessness that we experience with respect to what I want to, how I want to be, and how I am, how I want thinking to be, and how the thinking is, how I want the quality of the mind to be, and how the quality of the mind is, how I want the individuality to assert and shine, but how the individuality is. In front, whenever I go in a human relationship, whenever I go in front of a person, that person invokes a certain individuality from me. I go in front of my child, I am a father or a mother. And I go in front of my parents, I am a child. And I go in front of my spouse, I am a spouse. And I go in front of my students, I am a teacher. When I go in front of my teacher, I am a student. Right? So every interaction invokes the individuality according to the karma of that situation, according to the programming of that situation. Spontaneous, there is no thinking about it. Right? So this, how it comes, we can observe it. This objectivity about it. So when we start doing that, we will start developing this objectivity about this individuality, how it operates in the background in different situations. So we'll start becoming aware of that. And then as we keep taking note of the different levels of helplessness, we will our awareness of the deeper levels of helplessness will start coming, where we are how that individuality, how I want to be. So the moment I come in front of someone, it invokes a certain kind of individuality naturally. Now that naturally invoked individuality, is it what is supposed to be? Is it the right one? Is this the dharmically the right one for that context? Or some unnecessary individuality is coming? For example, there is a therapist and a client, right? There is somebody who is doing some counseling, and then there is a client. Because in this context, it happens a lot. There is something they call as transference. That person who is a client might look like your mother, or for the client, the therapist might look like that person's dead wife. uh, then what we call as transference. They will superimpose that relationship over this relationship. So it happens. It's very, sometimes it can be very compulsive and override the professional relationship that is supposed to be there. So this is one of the challenges many therapists face, right? Transference. So whatever is naturally invoked in a context comes from my conditioning and the various triggers that the sensory inputs of that situation gives in me. So all the sensory inputs are invoking a certain individuality from my system based on my programming and conditioning. And my buddhi, my prefrontal cortex has a target. This is how I am supposed to be. That is the sense of dharma, right? What is right for this situation is there. So if I am not a psychopath, what is right for the situation is going to assert itself. Then there is going to be internal conflict, pressure, etc. So I am experiencing a certain level of helplessness with respect to the arising of this unwanted aspects of this individuality that is not relevant for the context. I can make a note. And then I sit and contemplate. I go to the root of it. I analyze it, contemplate on it, and then I rewire it according to how it is supposed to be. Or I eliminate the causal factor, which is basically some kind of bhoga. Every time my individuality asserts in a certain way, it is because behind that is a desire or a fear. Always. Raga or dvesha. That is what pushes a certain kind of individuality in a context, which is asmita. Right? Some desire or a fear is pushing. So I will have to address that desire or a fear. And unless I am rising above it or dissolving the need for it, this erroneous individuality is not going to stop itself from arising next time. So I have to go to the root of that problem, which is the knot, the cognitive knot that sustains this entire false structure, that sustains this entire pattern of struggle. So this sounds like a very tough thing, but it is not a tough thing, provided you make a note of all the different, start making a habit of making a note of the different levels of helplessness that you experience through your everyday life. Whatever you remember, you can have a journal and just make a small note. I experienced this. Make a note and move to the next thing. So that becomes like a sadhana that will, then you look at it and see, and then see then you prioritize what is important. Then you work with that thing with the help of a teacher, right? Teacher, therapist, a combination of various things, various tools, satsanga, scriptures, studies, svadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, tapasya. With all that, we can do something about these various levels of helplessness, and then we are able to bridge the gap between how the mind is, how the individuality is, and how the consciousness, how the mind is supposed to be. So we are constantly, the one of the main approaches that can help us in our journey towards seeing the rising above the helplessness with respect to this individuality is to note down the small experiences of helplessness throughout the day in our little struggles of life, in our everyday life. Start from the small things, start from the simple things where you experience some helplessness and struggle and challenges that comes from habit asserting itself over your judgment. Whenever habit is asserting itself and pitching against your judgment, you are experiencing a certain level of helplessness. Make a note. Then we see what to do about it. While you are dedicating your behavior at the behavior level, you keep behaving according to your conscious judgment, according to what is meant for the Purushartha. If you are able to, if you are experiencing helplessness in the behavior level itself, then addressing that becomes more urgent. Then we see what to do. But usually for many little things, behavior is able to be taken care for all the sane people. So as much as possible, you take care of it in behavior. Because you feel something, you don't have to do it no matter how you feel. You do what you think you are supposed to do, what you understand you are supposed to do. You don't do what you feel. You process what you feel, integrate it with your knowledge, and then what you feel is in alignment is what you are supposed to, or it evolves into your zone of it is okay to do, it is in alignment with my purushartha, whatever, or you change it in a way that is in alignment with your purushartha. Then you are becoming less helpless about it. And then maybe we can do it. But when you are experiencing a conflict and a helplessness, resolve the conflict. But at that time, if it is an urgent situation where we have to act, we act according to what we know. We don't act according to what we feel. Here we are not talking about certain intuitive gut feeling where we have to make some quick decisions. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about the feeling that comes from what I like. Feeling here, I mean likes and dislikes. My strong preferences. If it is a personal preference, the feeling comes from a personal preference, then you don't honor it unless it is in alignment with the values. And if you have to make an urgent decision on action, you act according to the values, not according to your comfort zone. It's like a ground rule, basic, fundamental, number one rule. After that, only everything comes. So this is what sadhana's first step, damyata, right? And then we process it. But we make note of that helplessness, inner struggle, the inner helplessness. We have to address. Just regulating behavior is not enough. In Bhagavad Gita, he says the one who sits in a meditation posture without doing anything else, he's just sitting in meditation posture. It all looks very nice, but then inside he is thinking of all that. That fellow is a hypocrite. Instead of that, this person should dedicate himself or herself into virtuous action, karma yoga. You should not sit and do raja yoga. Very clear. You be busy doing your dharma rather than meditating, and develop a meditative mind. So as we make this observation of the various kinds of helplessness, we will develop a very deep understanding of what is the correct kind of sadhana we have to do when, and what spiritual tools we should use how much in our journey towards becoming Ratambhara. Right? So with that, I will conclude the session. If you have any questions based on what we discussed today, you might ask, or if you have any other question which you are itching to ask, you may ask. All right. I guess that's about it. 1 minute, 1 minute. Somebody said 1 minute. Wait. We have 3 minutes. No problem. You can unmute and ask an audio question also. It's all right. Right. How to apply the learning in a crucial situation as in the moment of heated conversation, anger, or strong desire like jealousy, etc. You see how much you are, how quickly, the first thing is The moment you experience anger or jealousy, you question your right to express yourself. The moment I am angry or jealous, I lose my right to express myself because I am asserting myself I am interfering in the course of the universe. Now, I'm not talking about righteous anger, where one has a complete choice over anger. I am not talking, jealousy is never righteous. There is no righteous jealousy. There can be righteous anger in the sense we have complete choice. We can switch off the anger. We show the anger, and it is like disagreement with adharma, for example. So blatant adharma in front of you, and you are in a role to correct it. That is your role. You have a job there. Then, when the righteous anger comes, we see how we can express it in the most efficient way. In righteous anger, there will always be the buddhi will be very clear. But in unrighteous anger, which is coming from ego, the buddhi will not be clear. And like for example, in Yoga Sutra, we say, swasa praswasa, angamejayatva, and all that, that shaking of the limbs, restlessness in the limbs. You can feel the restlessness in your limbs, some restlessness in your navel, and then the breathing becomes heavy and all that. So what we do is first we take control of the prana. I just understand that now the anger or jealousy is becoming strong. So I will not express myself first. It is not my anger and jealousy is not important. I am not important right now, but my mastery over this anger and jealousy is important. That's what I have to condition myself. So it's like a formula I can keep. What we do is like a ritual, right? So let us say, for example, I will tell from my example. I become very angry in the sense pissed off in a superficial level anger when I am driving with fantastic traffic that is there in our country, that is constantly, committed. The traffic in our country is committed to making us a Zen master. So what I do is I have some kind of ritual. I will take a deep breath or something. I see that this pattern is repeating. Then I put some guards where I will not show that anger in driving. Okay, if it is becoming too much, I will go to the corner and park and work with the anger. If it is not too much, what I will do is I will find some other way of releasing it first. So the moment I am angry, I know I am not supposed to show that anger in the driving. That is the first guard. Okay, I cannot, no matter how justified I am, I cannot hit that two-wheeler guy go in the middle of the road in 20 per hour when the entire road is free and blocking all the traffic. That there is always some people who do that. That's one of the things that really turns me off. So I cannot hit him. No matter what, I cannot hit him. Right. So that is the first thing. Then what I do, then I see how to address it. And then the moment I have stopped in my action, I have all my options open for the dealing with the background anger. Now this is a very simple situation I am saying, but there may be some very deep situations where, like, it completely takes you over, like some proselytizing guy giving pamphlet in front of a temple, or somebody who is molesting a young child or something. You want to take a sword and chop his hand. That's what you feel like, and that is absolutely righteous anger. But we cannot do that, so we have to see what we have to do. That anger is correct. If you see complete adharma in front of you, blatant adharma happening in front of you, you feeling angry towards that, it's correct. It's valid anger. That's supposed to be. That is Lord Rudra there. That is okay. But it cannot take over your faculties of action. It has to. There we take control of prana and see how to express that. So in righteous anger, you take control of prana and see how you can channelize that force of that anger into some useful action. Jealousy, there is no righteous jealousy. So jealousy becomes a context for self-reflection always. So when you feel jealous, maybe we can practice that, Maitri. Your jealous is always when somebody else is having what you don't have. You feel happy for that person and you develop a sense of attitude of friendliness towards that person. So that will calm down the jealousy, but that will not address the root of jealousy. So for addressing the root of jealousy, we have to go and sit and go completely into that jealousy and maybe talk about it and express it in a journal and then see how the jealousy is operating. And that jealous me have to wake up to the error that I am making that is causing the jealousy. The jealous mind has to realize its own error. So that is a process of internal contemplation. Probably we can discuss. So we have to sit and work with the mind. You have to sit and work with that force, that movement of the mind. Like like this vipassana meditation. You watch it. Don't do anything about it. Observe, completely accept that jealousy. Stay with it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to express it. Don't indulge in it. Don't allow it to go into a drama, thought drama. Just feel that raw jealousy. Just feel. Stay with it. Don't try to get rid of it and become okay. Now you are going to try to understand it. The jealousy is like some wild animal inside. You're going to understand it. So you have to become aware at the point where the jealousy is arising. If you observe without any reaction to the jealousy long enough, the attention, the faculty of attention, the faculty, the buddhi that is inside the jealousy is hijacked by a vasana. Okay. So what will happen is that vasana's force will reduce and the buddhi that is hijacked by the vasana that is sustaining the jealousy, that movement of the buddhi will slow down, and after a certain level of slowing down, at a critical point, awareness will wake up there. It will get wired with your prefrontal cortex, or it will get wired with your knowledge. The knowledge will awaken there, and there will be a certain kind of a self-awareness of that jealous you. And then there will be perception of what is the error that is causing jealousy. The moment that perception happens, that intellect, that cognitive knot that is the reason for jealousy will go. It takes some time and takes a lot of patience and it has to be done. That is the only way that knot that is causing jealousy will go. But if you don't have time for that, Maitri or friendliness can put one nice coating on top of jealousy, and you will not feel that uh, at the level of helplessness. The jealousy will not control your thinking and behavior. It will not drive you, and you will experience some kind of internal soothing feeling. You will be okay. Temporarily, you will be okay. So that's how we deal with jealousy. And similarly, there are for other things. The Chitta Prasadanam Sutra will take care of it. Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshanam Dukha Dukha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanartha Chitta Prasadanam. That is what we use for negative emotion. And if I feel anger, I try to empathize. After I am able to have a choice over my anger, where it is because of personal discomfort, I feel anger. Now, I used to feel very angry when somebody talked at my last sip of coffee. I'm enjoying this. I have a problem. If I taste the coffee, if I am listening to somebody, some sound or somebody's words, I cannot feel some kind of thing. So if I will be like nobody, this is the fun thing with all my students. They will all keep quiet when I'm having my last sip of coffee because they know that I don't like to talk during the last sip of coffee. When I realized this is not fair on everybody else, what is this nonsense? And I started working with that. But still, it is nice when nobody talks in my last sip of coffee. But at least if somebody talks at the last sip of coffee, it doesn't piss me off. I sat and worked with that. Like this, from anger comes from a certain personal discomfort. Then we develop. We can don't express it, and then you what you call as invalidate. It is not valid. First to say this emotion is not valid. First, this feeling I am having is not valid. First, once it is not valid, then you are free to work. It is not going to take over your intellect. It is not going to take over your individuality. This is not valid. Put a label on it. Invalid on label. So the moment you experience this, crucial situation of strong emotions, make a judgment on that emotion. Is it a valid or invalid? Make an immediate judgment. During the sadhana, as we become better and better in our spiritual sadhana, as the quality of sattva improves in that, this judgment of whether an emotion is valid or invalid will start getting better and better over time. Yeah. So the more, if you are not able to make a judgment, ask a more sattvic person. I am feeling this. Is it valid or not valid? Text your guru. Is it, Guruji, is this valid or not valid? I did one. I was very angry in a certain place, and I had a dilemma. Okay, I dealt with it. It was not a problem. It was not a pressure. But I wanted to understand whether that feeling was valid or not valid. Then I checked with my guru to check along according to what Dharma Shastras recommend in this context, according to what is my role, etc. And then I clarified it. It was very useful, right? So you can do that later. So you do whatever, and then if you have a small doubt about it, you can always recheck later. But first label it valid or invalid. If it is valid, find ways to express it in a more acceptable manner. If it is invalid, don't express it. If it is too strong, get away from the situation and work with it as soon as possible. So that's how I think, in the light of yoga, we would deal with this kind of crucial situation. Okay? So I think that's enough. I'll complete the class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.